But now I have to tell you about growing up as a kid in Astoria, Queens, a few miles, maybe 2 or 3 miles from LaGuardia Airport. For any of you who have landed at LaGuardia Airport, you'll know where it is. I was born on November 19, 1933 in an attached house, 2137 23rd Street. I lived there until I got married 22 years later. It was a 3-story building, 20 feet across. And there was probably 20 or 30 houses on the block on both sides. It looks the houses now look so close to each other. But when we were kids, we thought that backyard was so big, and it was obviously only 20 feet across, probably less than 20 feet long, because we had a 2-car garage in the back. But now in Astoria, let's see, growing up, what do I remember? I remember one time Mr. Nelson, down the block from us, we're playing marbles right in front of his house. And there'd be a group of us playing. We'd shoot the marbles, and he got angry with us. He was a tough old guy, but he agreed to build a place where we could play marbles across the street from his house, on the other side of the street where the schoolyard was. So he got out a rake and stuff and cleaned it up, and then we'd play our games with marbles, where we pitched the marbles. You had to get close to the hole. It was like bocce, but only small little marbles that you could shoot with your fingers. That's one thing I remember. I also remember we played all the city games. Slap ball, kick the can. Played in the schoolyard. We'd play, we'd pitch the ball against the wall. Strike box. You'd have a strike box on the wall, and you'd be, maybe 60 feet away, and you'd pitch with a pink Spalding or a tennis ball. The tennis balls you could curve, but the Spaldings you couldn't curve, but they would, if you threw it fast enough, it would move a little bit. And I remember playing with Frankie, and my brother Frankie was 1.5 years younger than me, and Kevin was 6 or 7 years younger. So we go over to the schoolyard one time, and Kevin's playing the outfield, and Frankie's out there pitching maybe 60 feet away, and I'm slugging the ball on him. And I keep telling him to get in closer and closer, and he gets in so close. And the closer he got in, the further I hit the ball on him. We lived right across the street, a half a block up from us, maybe 200 yards up from us. On the other side of the street was PS 122, where we played basketball and strike box. And the guys now, when I go back now in 2009, 2010, the Hispanics use it to play soccer. They play soccer on the concrete, and there's mobs that are watching it. The house I grew up in, 2137 23rd Street, it was an attached house. You can see my cousins lived next door to the left there, 20 feet across. That tree was not that big then. My mother used to have hydrangea bushes that grown out in the front, and there were no, the fences were not there. So if you look closely, you can see there's a stoop going up about 2 or 3 steps from the street. We would play with a Spalding stoop ball, that's it, because it was a stoop. And you would throw the ball against the step, and the ball would come flying out, and there would be a guy probably on the sidewalk past where the fence was, maybe about 5 feet out. And the ball would come out on a line, and if it hit the ground, maybe if it went in the street, it was a double. If it went across the street, it was a home run. But we played that. Played stoop ball there. That was one of the city games. You played with a pink Spalding. Also, right in front of the house on the sidewalk there. Now, you got to remember that those fences were not around there. But we would play box ball, which is sort of like tennis, only you're using you don't have a net, but you're playing, each guy has to defend his box. And you slap, like ping pong, you're slapping the ball back and forth. That's another game we played. Right out on the street, we used to play roller hockey. It was ice hockey, but you'd play it on a city street. And because of World War II, there were very few cars. So you would, when we were playing ball on the street, if a man came, there were probably only 4 or 5 cars on the whole block. And we'd ask the man, "Mister, would you move your car?" And they would. They would move it up so we could play our stick ball or slap ball or whatever, kick the can, anything we were playing on the streets. And I do remember a block away from here was a wide avenue, Van Ness Avenue, which was like a double width of a normal city street. And the bigger guys, when I was maybe 13, the guys that were in their 20s would play roller hockey on Sunday, and the crowd would go right around, would be out on the street. So right behind the hockey nets on each side, and the cars would have to wait until there was a face-off. And then they would stop and let the traffic drive through, and then they'd resume the game. And there might be a couple hundred people watching these guys play out right in the middle of the boulevard. If you tried that now, man, there'd be cars zooming by at 60, 70 miles an hour, man. They wouldn't listen to you. You can see the house. There's 3 stories. We lived on the first floor. Let's see, and you'd walk in the front door, and on the left there was a staircase going up to the 2nd and 3rd floor. But on your right, there'd be the living room, and you'd walk through the living room. There was a bedroom behind that, and a kitchen. And behind the kitchen there was a shed that an uncle of mine had built that was like a storage place. And then you'd go out into the small backyard. But we would play football in that living room right there. I remember playing in the house with my 2 brothers, and we'd have to play on our knees, and you'd have to try to go through, and how we did it and how we tackled each other. I vividly recalled going up in the back room on the 2nd floor. My brothers, Frankie, who was a year and a half younger, and Kevin, who was 6 or 7 years younger, we slept in that back room. And in the front 2 rooms, there was a kitchen and a bedroom. There was a married couple living there, newlyweds that were there, and there were people living up on the 3rd. We rented the 3rd floor apartment. So the staircases were open so that they were practically walking up through your living areas. But what I wanted to say was, in that back room on the 2nd floor, it's late at night, and one of us, we had bunk beds and another bed, and we'd have the lights out and the radio on, and I vividly recall listening to this country western music. It had to be 1940, 41, maybe 45, let's see, I was 33, maybe I was 12 or 13. And this guy's singing, and I couldn't get over the sound of his voice. And years later, I was able to get an 8-track taping of his, and it was Hank Williams singing from down south, but through a radio station in New Jersey. And my brothers and I would listen to Hank Williams and other country western guys as we were falling asleep in Queens, New York.